Alright, so with the Bethesda showcase, we got a ton of information given to us about Starfield. One of my most anticipated games of all time. Bethesda is one of my favorite game developers, if not my absolute favorite, especially with RPGs. I've loved all the Elder Scrolls games, from Morrowind up, because I didn't play anything before that, a little before my time. But I also loved Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4, and admittedly, now Fallout 76. But let's get into the nitty-gritty details of Starfield. Well, I think one of the key things about this is the size and scale. People are a little frightened by the fact that Todd Howard bragged about 1,000 planets available for you to explore, 100 systems for you to fly to and investigate. So obviously with something like this, we're going to see procedural generation. And to be fair, since Fallout 76's launch, Bethesda has been working on their procedural generation technology. And for a lot of you, you might not even know, but Oblivion, Horizon Forbidden West, Assassin's Creed, of course No Man's Sky, all these games use procedural generation in different ways. And that is something to take note. No Man's Sky, to be compared to Starfield, is just unfair and unreasonable. It is absolutely a completely different math equation that is being used to generate these different areas and maps. No Man's Sky had 4 quadrillion different planets to explore, while Starfield has 1,000. And if you're worried about this game just being all filler, well, they have over 200,000 lines of dialogue with a silent protagonist. That's right, in Fallout 4, they had over 110,000 lines of dialogue dedicated towards the main character, just to put this in perspective. And while this game has the most dialogue out of any Bethesda game created yet, and all those lines of dialogue are dedicated towards other NPCs. And yes, some are going to be sound effects like death sounds and things like that, but nowhere near a number to be worried about. And just to add to all this, Todd Howard promised that there is more handcrafted content than there has ever been in a Bethesda game. That is humongous. There are 4 major cities throughout this entire game. New Atlantis, being the major starting city, is noted to be the biggest city ever built by a Bethesda game studio. The story content varies from 30 to 40 hours. That is a lot of story content. I'm pretty sure Fallout 4 was close to that, probably closer to the 30 if you just grinded the story. But to see this much content outside of all the side missions, this is fantastic. And we haven't been given too much detail about what the story really is, but essentially we will be working with Constellation, an organization that is discovering the mysteries of the galaxy. Life's greatest question, in fact. Like, where did we come from? And modding will be making a major return. Todd Howard specifically mentioned that modders will have the best experience with the tools that they're giving the community. But does this mean that we'll be getting this on consoles? We can only hope. But alright, let's get into the gameplay, starting off with the space side of things. It looks and sounds amazing first off. There are random pirate encounters. Exploration is going to be a major factor outside of just combat. Boarding enemy ships, smuggling, docking at space stations. These pirates and ships that you encounter, you can steal them. You're not stuck just in first person. You also have third person available to you. Pacing of combat is a bit slower. Instead of this faster paced combat that you might see in like Star Wars Battlefront, it seems like it's going to take a little bit more of a slower approach, which I appreciate. I don't really want snapshot reflexes in my space combat with this game. The flight controls available to you seem to be a little more than basic. You can adjust power levels in multiple categories like lasers, missiles, engines, shields. There is no manual planet landing, or liftoff. Todd Howard said instead of focusing time and resources on that, they wanted to focus on the actual flight and ground control in the game. This is fair, but a bit of a bummer because in No Man's Sky, that is definitely one of my favorite features that never got old. But let's get into the on-ground gameplay. I guess we'll start with the HUD. It looks pretty basic, but also perfect in my opinion. Similar to what you'd see in a Fallout experience. You have your health, your frag grenades, and your weapon information all on the bottom right. Your compass, on the other hand, on the bottom left, it highlights undiscovered areas much like you would see in Elder Scrolls or in Fallout. It seems to highlight red when there are enemies nearby, and you have an O2/CO2 meter that appears to be like stamina, which is in fact tied to your jetpack. Jetpacks and zero gravity seem to be a massive part of the ground combat in this game. Although they didn't show much of the jetpack and zero gravity gameplay, I am still really excited to see how all that's going to unfold, especially with companions. I have a feeling it's going to get a little funny, but also amazing. Scanning seems to be a huge part of this game. You can scan objects and creatures to gather intel on different planets. There appears to be a certain amount of things you can scan on each planet. This seems to gradually increase the stats on each planet. Also, there seems to be a return to photo mode. This is awesome. I wish Elden Ring had a photo mode. That would just, I would have spent a lot of time fooling around with that. But that doesn't matter because we're talking about Starfield, and photo mode will in fact be making a return. Speaking of returning features, we have pickpocketing and lockpicking. Now, of course, I have to mention crafting and researching. This seems to be like it's going to be a big part of the game. If you want it to be, you can craft food and drinks, you can craft weapons and mod them. This system may not have been spoken of a lot, but on screen we did get to see quite a bit, and it seems very in-depth and something I'm very excited to dive deep into, especially with the idea of these highly futuristic weapons. Now let's get into probably my favorite part of all of this, the customization. Character customization is more advanced than any Bethesda game prior. One of the highlights is that there are traits that you can pick, up to 3. These traits seem to give you both a positive and negative effect, much like you would see in the Outer Worlds. Traits like being an extrovert or an introvert, giving you a bonus to exploring alone or with a companion. And that was just a couple of the traits mentioned. What excites me is that you can have parents in this game, but it gives you a penalty of having to spend money on their mortgage. But what does this mean? Are you going to just have morale bonuses throughout the game? Or are you going to be able to talk to them, interact with them? I'm so curious with this kind of feature. You can also start with a house, but this means that you have a major mortgage that you're paying and you're going to start off in debt? Like all these things, I just can't wait to dive into Starfield. Just small things like this get me very excited. Another highlight with customization is that there is about 20 starting backgrounds that also give you bonuses. Being a diplomat gives you speech bonuses, better selling prices, and the ability to make lower enemies surrender to you. Being a combat medic gives you a bonus damage with pistols, or better healing and higher carrying capacity. And it seems to affect the dialogue with certain NPCs as well, which I just love these little details again in games. Now with leveling up, there seem to be 5 skill trees. They didn't really show much of this. We did get to see the combat skill tree, and it seems like as you level up, you can choose certain skills, and within these skills, you can rank them up to give you even more perks by completing certain challenges. And I guess the last thing I'll talk about with customization is the companions are making a return. Vasco, he's been talked about the most lately, and he is our little robot companion. Now we're unsure if you can use him while you're exploring and in combat, they didn't really show that, or if you're going to be able to customize him, but it's really cool to kind of see him every time you land on a planet make this kind of grand entrance, which I hope after a certain amount of time you can just kind of skip that animation. I imagine you can with our technology with minimal load times, but That all being said, it does still look cool. And there are going to be other companions. Apparently there's going to be people that you encounter, all sorts of random people, and you can actually recruit them on your ship or for your outposts. And that's right, we're going to get into the outpost customization, because you can build, just like you could in Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, build camps and settlements. We are now building outposts. And in Starfield, it seems like we're going to have much more freedom. You're going to be able to fully customize your outposts with different structures that provide different things, like power or different resources. You can fully outfit these outposts with people you meet along your way, like I had mentioned earlier. I'm really hoping that you can maybe romance some of these people. That's always a fun feature in games. Now, one thing that wasn't shown is alien NPCs that you actually talk to. They did show a lot of aliens in the game that you shoot down, which looked awesome, but I really hope that there's some sort of humanoid creatures that you can meet and maybe recruit along the way. Now, there appears to be a few different resources to manage with your outposts: power, storage, crew, and protection. This looks like it will be an essential way to gather resources as well. Now, we're unsure if there's going to be survival mechanics implemented, like are you going to need to supply food for all these NPCs? I don't know. I'm really excited to see all of this because I love these kind of mechanics thrown in this first-person shooter. I loved it in Fallout 4 when it worked, and in Fallout 76 when it works. But these outposts look important. If you want to gather certain resources to maybe get mods for weapons or just to further upgrade your ship, well, it looks like you're going to really need to hammer out some of these outposts and upgrade them. And I guess the last thing I'll talk about is ship customization. This appears to be a very in-depth system available to those that are the spacecraft enthusiast. You can dive deep into this feature with having multiple levels and floors on your ship and placing anything anywhere, it seems. But you can also boycott this entirely by purchasing prefabricated ships. All of these ships will have positive and negative effects depending on the type that it is. Assuming that if you're flying a small spacecraft, you are going to be much more agile than flying a massive carrier that will have much more defense. I'm also really excited to see how these ships handle in space combat. Hopefully we can really feel the weight of some of these bigger ships and feel the agileness of a lot of these smaller ones. And it doesn't seem like you're going to be able to jump 150 light years instantaneously. It seems like you're going to need to upgrade your ship, and I think that's where these outposts upgrading might come in handy, because they didn't really show any space resource managing. Like, you're not going and shooting asteroids and collecting iron. It seemed like most of that was on the ground, and it didn't seem like a massive part where you're just stuck endlessly shooting rocks for iron. But anyways, those are just some of the features that I picked up on. I cannot tell you guys how excited I am about Starfield. After all these videos I've seen and seeing the showcase in person firsthand, I am beyond excited. But anyways, let me know, guys, are you pumped about Starfield like I am? Or are you more on this skeptical side? Because I know Bethesda, with Fallout 76 especially, has let down a lot of people and, destroyed a lot of people's trust. But I'm more on the side of the enthusiast, where I think this is going to be great because this is Todd Howard's father project. But anyways, let us know on our Discord or on our website at insidethegame.ca what your thoughts are about Starfield.